You're 22. You speak 4 languages fluently: French, Portuguese, Lingala, and English. Because you grew up in 3 countries before you were 10, the way diplomats' kids and refugee kids both do, just for opposite reasons. You're working as a freelance translator in Antwerp, mostly legal documents and shipping manifests for import-export companies. It's boring, steady work. 28 euros an hour. You eat the same lunch every day from the same Vietnamese place because the consistency feels like an achievement. Then a man named Mr. Okafor messages you through a translation marketplace. He needs someone for occasional verbal interpretation at business meetings. Cash, 400 euros per session. No tax forms. He says the work involves the gemstone trade. You've translated enough shipping documents to know what the gemstone trade sometimes means in certain countries. You tell yourself it's probably fine. You tell yourself this the way people tell themselves a lot of things. The first meeting is in a hotel conference room. Mr. Okafor is in his 60s, soft-spoken, wears a wedding ring and reading glasses. Across the table, 2 men who don't speak French, only Lingala and a regional dialect you also happen to know. You translate for 2 hours. The conversation is about logistics, certification, and transport corridors. Everyone is polite. Everyone drinks tea. At the end, Mr. Okafor hands you an envelope and thanks you for your professionalism. You count it later in the hotel bathroom. 400 euros exactly as promised. You feel almost insulted by how normal it was. Over the next 4 months, you do 11 more sessions. You start to understand the shape of what you're translating without anyone explaining it to you, because that's what 4 months of careful listening does to a person who's good with language. The gemstones are diamonds. The transport corridors avoid customs checkpoints in at least 2 countries. The certification discussions are about documents that make diamonds mined in conflict zones appear to have been mined somewhere else. Somewhere the International Diamond Certification System doesn't ask questions about. You're translating for a conflict diamond smuggling operation. You've known this on some level since session 3. You kept showing up anyway because 400 euros in cash 11 times is 4,400 euros, more than you'd make in 2 months doing legal document translation. And because nobody has asked you to do anything except translate words that other people are saying anyway. You tell yourself, the diamonds are moving with or without you. All you're doing is making sure 2 groups of people understand each other. That's just language. That's just your job. Session 12 is different. It's not in a hotel. It's in a warehouse near the port, and there are more people than usual. 8, maybe 9, including 2 you haven't seen before. One of them is young, younger than you, maybe 19. He's nervous in a way the others aren't, and he keeps looking at the door. Mr. Okafor asks you to translate something specific. He needs you to explain to the young man, in his own dialect, exactly what will happen to his family in his home village if a shipment scheduled for next week doesn't arrive at its destination on time. You're handed a piece of paper with the message written out. You're asked to translate it word for word, not soften it, not summarize it. Word for word. You read the paper. It's specific. It includes a name, a child's name, and an age. 8 years old, you look up, everyone is waiting. Mr. Okafor, soft-spoken, wedding ring, reading glasses, is waiting for you to do your job. This is the moment you understand something you've been avoiding for 4 months. You were never hired because you're a good translator. There are dozens of good translators in Antwerp who speak these languages. You were hired because you're 22, you needed the money, and you didn't ask questions, which made you exactly the kind of person an operation like this needs in a room like this. You're not a translator anymore. The moment you open your mouth and say these words in this room, you become something else. A messenger for a threat against an 8-year-old, and you'll have done it in his own language, in his own dialect, in the voice of someone he might have trusted because you sound like home. You have maybe 4 seconds to decide what kind of person you are. 4 seconds, in a warehouse, with 8 people watching, one of whom is twice your size and standing slightly too close to the door. You translate it, not because you wanted to, because in that warehouse, in that moment, No wasn't a sentence that existed in any of the four languages you speak. You say the words. You watch the 19-year-old's face change as he understands what's being said to him. In his own dialect, by someone who looks like they could be from his own country. He doesn't react the way you expect. He doesn't argue, he just nods, very small, and looks at the floor. Like he already knew this was coming. Like this is just confirmation of something he's understood about the world for a long time. The meeting ends 20 minutes later. Mr. Okafor hands you an envelope. 400 euros. You take it. Your hand doesn't shake, which surprises you because everything else about you is shaking. You don't go to session 13. You don't message Mr. Okafor to quit. You just don't show up, and you turn your phone off for 3 days and you tell yourself that's the same as stopping. It's not the same as stopping. You learn this 2 weeks later when you're contacted, not by Mr. Okafor, but by someone else. Someone who identifies themselves only as working with an NGO focused on conflict mineral supply chains. They know your name. They know about the 11 sessions. They know about session 12, the warehouse, the message you translated. They don't threaten you. That's almost worse. They tell you calmly that they've been building a case against this network for 2 years, and that your testimony, specifically your testimony about session 12, about the threat against a minor, could be the piece that turns a trafficking investigation into a child endangerment prosecution. Something that gets real attention, real sentences. They also tell you something else, the 19-year-old from session 12. His name was Patrice. He's missing. Has been for 9 days. Nobody's heard from him since the night after that meeting. You sit with this for a long time. You think about the 4 seconds in the warehouse. You think about how you told yourself it was just language. Just words moving from one mouth to another, and how for 4 months that was almost true, and then for 30 seconds in a warehouse it became the most consequential thing you've ever done with your voice. You think about Patrice's face, the small nod, like he already knew. The NGO contact gives you a number to call, no pressure, no deadline. They say most people in your position never call back. They say that's understandable. They say it's also how networks like this keep operating for 20 years instead of 2. You have the number. You have 4,400 euros in cash that you've been keeping in a shoebox. Because depositing it would require explaining where it came from. You have 4 languages, and for the first time since you were 10 years old, you're not sure any of them have the right words for what you're supposed to do next. That wraps it up for today. This story is entirely fictional, but conflict diamond trafficking and the use of translators, interpreters, and neutral intermediaries inside these networks is a documented and ongoing reality in global supply chains. If you were in that warehouse in those 4 seconds, would you have translated it? And if the answer is no, what do you think would have happened to you? Drop your honest answer below. This isn't a question with a comfortable answer, and that's exactly the point. Subscribe for more stories like this. See you in the next one.